10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 42. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 42 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. My name is Nick Manella and I am the creator and host of the show. If you're new to the program, we welcome you in, and this is a show where we try to give you a little short jazz lesson every single week that hopefully you can work on and will help you in your improvising career. So today we're going to do our monthly Lick of the Month series, and we're going to look at a piece of vocabulary from one of my favorite saxophone players, John Coltrane. If you're interested in the music of John Coltrane, you can go back and check out a couple of episodes that I did about Coltrane changes, but this one's going to be a little bit different. This vocabulary this week is not going to be over Coltrane changes. So before we get into the episode, a couple of items of housekeeping. First of all, we just want to really thank you for listening to the show and supporting us in any way possible. If you have a minute or two, and it really literally only takes about 2 minutes, please hop on iTunes, look up the show, and leave us a 5-star rating and review. That really helps the ranking of the podcast and helps us to get in front of more people. So if you could do that, that would be so appreciated from our end. And also, make sure you go and check out our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com. That's the number 10minutejazzlesson.com. And there you can find all sorts of cool stuff, our blog. You can find all the back episodes of the show, not to mention finding the PDF for this episode. There's a PDF that accompanies every single episode, and it is 100% free. So go and check out the website. That really supports us as well. And go and check out our store section. There's a lot of really cool materials that you can buy there. None of them are very expensive, and that really helps the show to keep going. All right, without further ado, let's jump into today's episode. So today, as I said, we're going to be looking at a piece of vocabulary from one of my favorite musicians of all time, John Coltrane. And I'm sure a lot of you out there are John Coltrane fans as well. And today we're going to be looking at a 2-measure double time line that he plays over the tune So What from the famous Kind of Blue recording. And this is a great piece of vocabulary. It's a little bit different than what I normally do here. Usually I'll give you like a 2-5-1 lick or something like that. But today we're going to be talking about what he would play over a static chord structure. And what do I mean by static? I mean a chord structure that doesn't move very much. So if you've ever played So What or Impressions, which actually have the same exact changes, you'll know that the tune is comprised of only 2 chords, a concert D minor chord and then a concert E flat minor chord. And there's these long stretches, 16 bars at a time, sometimes even 24 bars at a time, where the chord never changes. And in my opinion, this is actually harder to play over than a bebop tune where the chord changes every 2 beats, because you really have to tap into your knowledge of that one chord in order to play an interesting solo. So this 2-measure line is going to give you some great insight on what somebody like Coltrane does to play something really interesting over a static chord change, which would be his E minor 7. And I'm going to actually play it in his key and talk about it in the key of E minor 7, because it'll just be a heck of a lot easier. So if you play something other than a B-flat instrument, you may want to transpose it into your own key over Impressions, but that shouldn't be too hard for you, especially if you've listened to some of the other episodes in our podcast series. So the first thing I want to do is actually just play the line for you so that you can hear what it sounds like, what it's made up of, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit. So I suggest having the PDF in front of you, so as I play the line, you can actually look at it and kind of explore what it's all about while you're listening to it. So you can hear it's a very interesting line. It has a lot going on in it. So let's break it down a little bit. So the first thing I want you to notice is that he uses a lot of chromaticism. And whenever he steps outside of the key, which is the key of E minor 7, so that's, two sharps, F sharp and C sharp, he's really stepping outside of the key in a chromatic way, which really is one of the core tenets of bebop and carried over into more modern jazz. It makes a solo really, really interesting and unexpected. But when we talk about chromaticism, we have to realize that it has to lead to a note that's inside of the key the majority of the time if we're talking about more of a bebop style of playing. So let's take, for instance, beat 2 of measure 1. He uses an A sharp, which doesn't really fit in the key of E minor, but you can see that right after that, he's going to a B, which is the 5th in the key of A minor, or E minor, sorry about that. And then if you look at the following two notes, right, we have F sharp to D sharp. Now, F sharp is in the key, but D sharp isn't. D sharp happens to be the leading tone, which is really important. If you don't know what a leading tone is, basically it's always the major 7th is called the leading tone because it leads us back to 1. So if you look at that part of it, what he's actually doing is he's surrounding the note E, first with an F sharp, then with a D sharp, and then he's actually landing on the note E on beat 3. So there's another instance of chromaticism. Now we can find a bunch of that, like look at beat 1 of the second measure of the line. He has an A sharp followed by a C sharp, and then he lands on B. So he's surrounding the note B with two other notes. And then again, we see the leading tone on beat 3 in measure 2, but this is used in a little bit of a different way. The D sharp over E minor 7, or the major 7 over a minor 7th chord, is a really great note to use because technically it's not in the key, but again, it's the leading tone, so it really does have a place in there. And then we see one more instance of chromaticism where in the very, very last note in measure 2, he's chromatically leading you into the minor 3rd where the entire line resolves. So that's a little bit of the chromaticism that's going on. Now let's look at another element of the line that I think is really, really awesome, and that is the use of a sequence. So if you've never heard of a sequence before, basically you're taking one idea and you're moving it around to different notes so that the continuity of that one idea continues, but you're playing it in several different ways. So if you look at beat 2, measure 2, I'm not doing very good with my words today. If you look at measure 2, the first 3 beats are somewhat of a sequence. Let me play it for you real quick and then we'll talk about it a little bit more. This is measure 2, the first 3 beats. So you can hear that that part of the lick kind of has a unifying thread, right? If you look at it, he starts with a note, then he jumps up with a skip, and then he comes down in the interval of a whole step followed by a third. Now, every single beat in that little sequence is not exactly the same, but I think you can hear when I play it that it definitely has a unifying thread throughout. So there's several ways to do a sequence. You can do an exact transposition of what you're playing over one beat over another beat, or you can basically just strive for, having that unifying thread, which I think you can definitely hear in there. So those are the two biggest things that I picked up from this lick, and that's really all that's going to fit into this episode, but I'm sure you can find a ton of other things that you can learn from this lick, and you can transfer it to your own playing. You could put it in all 12 keys if you want. Learn to play it at a bunch of different tempos. Remember, this is a double time lick, so this might be a good one to actually practice your double time feel over, or work on it however you want. Whatever kind of benefit you're going to get out of it, just try to pull those little gems out of the lick and transfer some of it to your own playing. I think we could all try to sound a little bit more like Coltrane. That would not be a bad thing. So that about does it for this week's episode. I hope you got something out of that. Remember to go to the website and download the PDF so you can actually have this lick to add to your library and work on it however way you want to. And remember to go and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and go and check out the website. Please consider donating to the podcast before you download the PDF. Consider donating $1 for each one of those PDFs that you download. That's only $4 a month, and it really helps us to keep this podcast going, which you hopefully enjoy and get something out of every week. Remember, you can always send me questions. I've gotten some great questions over the past couple of weeks that I'm going to try to address next month in the podcast. You can get to me at 10minutejazzlesson@gmail.com with any questions or comments about the show or any of the stuff that we're doing here. Find us on Facebook. Give us a like. We post all of our new episodes on Facebook. And you can follow me on Instagram at Manila Music. If you want some more tips, I try to post some saxophone videos on there if you're a saxophone player. And generally just find us on the internet and follow us if you enjoy the show. All right, everybody, we'll see you next week with a brand new episode. Have a great one.